Hello there. We're back. It's Syracuse Sports. It's Brent Axe. It's you. It's lacrosse. It's May. Oh, baby. Syracuse lacrosse. One win away from its 28th Final Four. One win away from getting to the place that Syracuse lacrosse spent so many Memorial Day weekends. You could book it. You could plan it ahead of time. You could count on the fact for so many years that you could see where the NCAA Division I Final Four was for men's lacrosse and know that you could spend the weekend there as a Syracuse lacrosse fan. Well, it hasn't happened since 2013. Syracuse, for the second straight year, on the brink of getting back to the Final Four. Last year, the Orange lost to Denver. Princeton stands in the way this time. And we are going to talk to a guy who's played in a few Syracuse-Princeton classics in his day and is a terrific ESPN analyst, let alone a terrific guy. Paul Carcaterra, former Syracuse national champion and All-American, is going to join us on the pod today. Love talking lacrosse with Carc. We're going to break down Syracuse-Princeton. We're going to talk about some of the great Syracuse-Princeton games he played in back in the day, some issues in the sport of lacrosse, and so much more, as they say, including a couple of terrific features that Carc has done recently on Syracuse attack Joey Spallina and Syracuse head coach Gary Gait. So that is coming up here shortly. I did want to spend a moment on this, though, before we get into the interview with Carc and really break down Syracuse's opportunity to get back to the Final Four. I am struck by how many people don't understand a fundamental concept of sports, and that is this, if I could put it as eloquent as I can, and I will edit myself here. Bleep happens, guys. Stuff happens in sports. As Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? I am struck by the number of fans, though, that don't like it when things don't go according to plan. Well, the beauty of sports is that things don't go according to plan. There is not a script here. It is the best unscripted drama left on the planet, right? So why do we get so upset when things don't go according to plan and to our expectations? And lacrosse can be a lot like football. You spend a week kind of talking yourself into something, and then when you don't see what you expect, well, the world's falling apart. Now, I'm going to break my rule here because our Syracuse Sports Insiders get exclusive voice on this podcast, and you can see it there on your screen. We would love for you to be a Syracuse Sports Insider, so you get all the latest from me, direct text message access to me anytime to talk Syracuse sports, the latest breaking news on Syracuse sports, and so much more. You guys know the deal of being a Syracuse Sports Insider. But I'm going to break my rule here, and I am going to feature a comment from social media. I actually got this message on Blue Sky. Yeah, that Blue Sky, still a thing. Jose says, hey, Brent, if you run into Orange lacrosse head coach Gait, suggest he make his team watch the first half of the Harvard game every day after practice this week. And for good measure, just before the Princeton game. Maybe they'll see the total lack of effort us fans saw at the Dome on Sunday night. Jose, I have a question for you. What happened in the second half of that game? You're telling me that you are going to stew in what happened in the first half, which was not good. Syracuse was down 8-2 at halftime. They're turning the ball over left and right. And yes, it's a team that came to the Dome earlier this year, and Syracuse fell into the same trap for most of that game that they did in the second game against Harvard, turning the ball over. Jimmy McCool, Syracuse goaltender, had his worst game against Harvard earlier in the year, probably had a second worst game of the year against Harvard this time around, right? Stuff happens in sports, guys. It is all how you react. It is all how you clean up your flaws and adjust as the game goes. Did I just see one of the great comebacks in Syracuse lacrosse history, or am I having a fever dream here? Yeah, you did. So if you want to focus on what happened in the first half, that's on you. I'd rather focus on, well, what did you do to adjust? What did you do when your moment came and you pounced on it? So when Harvard committed a penalty that gave Syracuse a man up, in which they ripped off 3 man-up goals, a total of 4 man-up goals in the fourth quarter, they had their moment. They pounced on it. They won the game. Guys, there are no scripts in sports, but you know what do come to life this time of year? Cliches, right? Survive and advance. Just win, baby. Find a way to win. That's what Syracuse did. They found a way to win. And by the way, this was a long time coming for Syracuse. Go back to the end of the regular season. They're down 14-8 to North Carolina with 3 minutes to go in that game and nearly pulled off that comeback. They needed that rehearsal to remember and know how to do it against Harvard. You go back to last season when a younger Syracuse team lost classic overtime games to Maryland, to Army, to Cornell, especially, right? It's a team that had to grow up and learn how to win in these adverse situations. It is a process. And I know people get tired of hearing coaches say, it's a process, it's a process, it's a process. But it is a process, right? I'm not excusing what Syracuse did in the first half of that game. They are certainly going to have to cut back on the turnovers a little if they're going to play Princeton and beat Princeton this week to get to the Final Four. That is all true. I'm just amazed that Jose's takeaway, and I've gotten more messages like this, is what they did in the first half versus what they did in the second. Guys, sports are messy, they are flawed, and you got to figure it out. And what Syracuse did in that game is they figured it out. They didn't lose their composure. Yeah, as Paul Carcaterra and I are going to talk about here, Syracuse's calm is contagious mantra can really test your patience as a fan, right? So if you saw that as a lack of effort or whatever you saw, did they correct it in the second half? Did they survive in advance? Did they find a way to win? Yes. Now, I will say this, in all fairness, Jose. Gary Gait has said all year that Syracuse has not played its best game. I believe they will have to play their best game against Princeton. I don't think you're going to be able to come back against Princeton if you're down by 6 goals, 5 goals, whatever the case may be. For lack of a better term, I don't think they can win by fluke, may be a strong term, because the way they came back against Harvard was not a fluke, but you got to admit it was a bit of an extreme, right? They're going to have to beat Princeton straight up. Jimmy McCool will have to be better in the net. Syracuse is going to have to get over this thing where they have these slow starts in the first quarter. I understand the frustration there. They're going to need their offense, all hands on deck. They're going to need John Mullen to continue to be one of the best face-off guys in the country. They're going to need their defense to lock down on what is a terrific, high-scoring attack. Princeton just dropped 22 goals on Towson last week. I don't know what the over-under on this game is, but take the over, right? So I think it's fair to say they're going to have to take a step forward and improve and not go by the same, and I'm going to use this word again, script. These things don't exist in sports, but you don't want to beat Princeton the same way you had to beat Harvard. I understand that. But I am amazed that one person out there is still stewing in what they saw in the first half versus, hey, these guys dug in, they found a way to do it, their opportunity came, and they won the game. That is sports at its best. So yes, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. But what happens when you get punched in the mouth? Do you go over in the corner and cower in fear, or do you find a way through it? And in this case, Syracuse did find a way through it. Will that lead to a win over Princeton and getting back where Syracuse lacrosse belongs, right? I think that history can be an enemy of Syracuse lacrosse sometimes because we're in the here and now. We're in 2025. This is not 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago. It's hard to escape the memories because this is going to be the 11th time that Syracuse and Princeton play. But this team is trying to forge its own identity in 2025. And they are a game away from adding their name to a long list of teams that have been to the Final Four, but also accomplishing something that is special and unique to them. So we'll see if they can pull it off. Paul Carcaterra is going to break all that down coming up here shortly. But as you guys know, we love to feature your original music here on Syracuse Sports, and I've got a new stock. I reached out to a bunch of artists that I saw on the syracuse.com Syracuse playlist. Shout out to my guy, Jeff Herbert, who puts this together. It's something you could check out on syracuse.com. There is a playlist of Syracuse artists on Spotify. Now, I want to stress here, you do not have to be a local artist. I love that a lot of artists here in Central New York are reaching out. This is a Syracuse-based podcast, of course, so people that have connections to Central New York tend to reach out. You don't have to be a Syracuse band, a original artist in Central New York to be featured here. It just so happens that we do feature a lot of original artists based in Central New York. And this is another one. They're called the Dart Brothers. And this is a song I came upon on Jeff Herbert's Syracuse playlist. And it is one of my absolute new favorite songs that I have found, local or otherwise, original or otherwise. It's a song called Marjorie. So we're going to feature a part of that here, and then we'll play the song in its entirety at the end of the podcast. You can get all the information on the Dart Brothers, who play a lot of local gigs here in Central New York. You can see them all summer long. All that information on where you can find their music, and their tour schedule is in the show notes. Please reach out if you want your original music featured here on Syracuse Sports. That information is in the show notes as well. So let's get a little bit of Marjorie right here, and then we'll get a lot of Paul Carcaterra coming up. All right, Cark, Syracuse-Princeton. That sounds right. That sounds like, okay, this is the 11th time they're going to meet up in the postseason. The prior 10 have all been entertaining. You've certainly had your experience in Syracuse-Princeton. So while it's 2025 and the game has evolved, it's funny how it all circles back, though, to some of the same old matchups.
It does, Brent. And when I saw that potential matchup, I just kind of took myself back in time, right? As a fan, prior to my arrival at Syracuse, I'll never forget, like, going to the Final Four in 1992 with all my high school buddies. I can't believe our parents actually let us do that. Like, we didn't go with any parents, right? We got in one of my friend's caravans, drove down there, and stayed in a hotel, and we watched Princeton, Syracuse in the 1992 national championship. And that was the overtime goal by Andy Moe, which kind of just announced Princeton's arrival to the lacrosse world, right? Because they were kind of an afterthought in the Ivy League, in the bottom half of the Ivy for so long. And then Bill Tierney, comes to Princeton, and within a year or two, he gets them relevant. And then in 92, they win the national title. And that was the first of many, many meetings between Syracuse and Princeton. 1993, they met in the semifinal game. I remember watching that, and Cuse kind of had the payback. I remember Matt Ryder in that game and the big matchup.
Yes.
With David Morrow and Scott Bacigalupo in goal. And then it just went on and on and on. And so many of those prior matchups that we were talking about with you and everyone else in the lacrosse world, it wasn't just a normal postseason matchup. Like, they were for national championships or national semifinals. And it didn't stop in the early 90s. I mean, when you think about, the 2000 final and the 2001 final and the 2002 final, like, they just kept coming back and back and back. So, I think it's awesome. And we're going to do our best to let the fans know this week when we're calling the game to kind of take some trips down memory lane.
I love that story. If you took the caravan with your friends to go to the games, but you played in some of these matchups as well. Yeah. If you had to pinpoint the Syracuse-Princeton moment as a player, what's the one that really grabs you?
Breaking my heart, junior year. We're playing in the national semifinals down at Byrd Stadium. That's what it's called then now, the University of Maryland. And 96, Princeton had a really good team, but they hadn't won with that group yet because it was a young group. It was Hess, Hubbard, and Massey in that great attack. They were only sophomores. We beat them in 95 in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So 96, they had a lot of young guys back. And had a terrific regular season. And they were beating us for a good portion of the game. And I'll never forget, it was 9-8. And then we score a goal to make it 9-9. They make the goalie change. And I laughed because I scored the ninth goal. And I scored with my left hand. And I don't score with my left hand much. So I got the goalie pulled. At the time, I think, wow, we're bringing in the backup. We're going to shell this guy and we're going to win this game. They put in Pancho Gutstein as a relief pitcher in that moment. And he doesn't just go in there and win the game. He stonewalls us and makes some ridiculous stops, and they go on to win 11-9. And I just remember my heart being broken because we thought we had all the momentum. Everyone saw the Cuse was rolling, and these comebacks are not something that just happened in 2025 against Harvard. Like when the Cuse gets rolling, it gets rolling. And we felt like we were there. And just to be disappointed, a lot of times you want to think of your best memory being a win, but that was the memory I have of Princeton because of how good they were, but also that started their quest for a three-peat. They won in 96, 97, and 98.
It's funny how you talk to athletes in different sports, and when you want to walk down the good old days, how often the stories are losses that defines you, that stuck with you, the one that got away, the one that motivated you to maybe to come back and win. And I mean, that's just the beauty of sports here. And I think that applies to what happened with Syracuse and Harvard before we talk about this Princeton team, Cark, because if you're going to come back down 6 goals in an NCAA tournament game, you have to have experience. You have to have been there and done that in some way. And I think back to last season, they lose to Cornell in overtime. They lose to Army in overtime. They lose to Maryland in overtime. That experience. Go back to just a couple weeks ago. They're down 14-8 to North Carolina, and they go on this incredible run and almost pull that thing off. If they don't wave off Finn Thompson's goal that got Syracuse within 1, they got the ball with 30 seconds left, and who knows what could happen, right? So it felt like the message that Gary Gait has been preaching to these guys, and it's a simple coaching philosophy, right? One day at a time, what's in front of you, calm is contagious. It all came to fruition at the right time in that Harvard game. What did you see in that comeback?
Calm is contagious can help you or could hurt you. I think it hurt them in the beginning. They came out really flat, right? I was shocked because Harvard came into the Dome in late February and smacked Cuse in that second half, right? They had that comeback. Syracuse had the big lead in the first tilt. I think they were up 5-1. They dominated faceoffs, and they had no business really losing that game. So I thought when Harvard came back into the Dome for part 2, they would come out flying. They didn't. It was one of the worst first halves I've seen Syracuse play all season long.
And they've had some slow starts this year.
They couldn't clear the ball. They had a ton of turnovers. And Harvard was not just winning that game, but dominating a game where they couldn't win a faceoff. So that's scary when you think about it. This team is dominating without the ball. What if they find their groove and they win a couple faceoffs? So the calm is contagious, I think, hurt them in the initial stages of that game. But I've never seen a team in an NCAA tournament game score 5 goals when they're trailing, right? Like sometimes there's these, one plays 16, you score 5 goals and who knows how short of a time. But I've never seen that. And I would venture to say it's never happened before where a team is trailing in an NCAA lacrosse game in a tournament down 5 goals and they score 5 goals in 1 minute and 39 seconds. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And I've been watching lacrosse for a long, long time. So the calm is contagious hurt them in the first half. It helped them in the second half because they get that penalty and all of a sudden they score 1. And Johnny Mullins is playing make it, take it. And then the expectation and the body language amongst all of them and the coaches is, okay, let's just play lacrosse. So I thought the calm is contagious really drove fans and everyone else watching that game nuts in the first half. But it was a beautiful thing to see in the second half. And there were some turning points in that game, right? Like, so when you think about a couple turning points, one probably won't be mentioned so much, but when Jerry Byrne threw the flag on a Trey Deer goal, and he questioned if Trey Deer was in the goal or goal crease or the goal mouth, I think that call might have cost the team the game. And I'll tell you this why. Because when they go on that 5-goal run, Jerry Byrne only has 1 timeout left. If Jerry Byrne has 2 and he doesn't challenge that, which I didn't think it was close. I don't know why he challenged it. Maybe he saw something else that I didn't. But when he challenges that and he loses his timeout, he doesn't want to waste his last timeout with, 7, 8, 9 minutes left in the game. So when he doesn't have the ability to use his last timeout, then I just thought Syracuse and the calm is contagious in the roll. It didn't even let them catch their breath, which was the best thing for the Orange and the worst thing for Harvard.
That's a great point. And that goal, Trey Deer did an amazing job kind of doing a balancing act on one foot. He did not go in the crease at all. And it took those kind of players like Trey Deer, odd man up, 2 goals. Chuck Kaczynski, of all people, comes down, rips home a pole goal, right? Nick Kakamo scoring. Now, it's not that you didn't have Joey Spallina and Owen Hiltz connecting on the winning goal. That feels right.
Yeah.
That those are the 2 that connect on the winning goal. Michael Leo scored. But that all led to not only calm is contagious, Kark, but I just had this image in my head sitting in the press conference when Jimmy McCool was explaining that Caden Cole, Syracuse is getting their, let's be honest here, they're getting their butts kicked. It's 8-2. They're getting out physical, and Caden Cole's out there on the man down just smiling. They just have made it a point to have fun in this game. And the image I had in my head of what this team is, I think of the Dark Knight, Joker and Batman finally come face to face. Batman's beating the crap out of him, and Joker's just laughing the whole time.
Yeah.
And I feel like Syracuse had to laugh through this, had to have fun through this, because that one goal when Hiltz went behind the back to Michael Leo, and now Syracuse has the lead, it's like, there they are. We've been looking for them for 4 quarters, and they found themselves, and they found the right groove. But it took so many other, I don't want to say smaller players, but guys that loom in the shadows sometimes for the big stars to step up.
Yeah, but also think about it. As an athlete, sometimes like playing in like an unconscious state is the best thing, right? You're not thinking, you're just flowing with the game. Yes. So I think if Harvard had the ability to call timeout after that second goal and a 5-goal run, they probably would have been able to regroup defensively. But Syracuse then would have probably had to overthink things rather than just play ball. So I thought that was a massive miscalculation by the Harvard staff. I don't know what video they were looking at, but Trey Deer would also be one of the last people I would check on a crease violation. He's a box lacrosse player. Like, he's got his PhD in finishing. That's what he does. Like, he's able to finish in tight quarters without moving his feet. But it still was interesting down the stretch. Sam English had the ball with less than 30 seconds left, and he was in the offensive frame. I don't know why Syracuse didn't call a timeout there. Like, they had one in the pocket. I don't know if Gary didn't see something from that vantage point, but that was dicey. Like, because then they go down and score. I think it was Owen Guest goes down and scores a goal with 6 seconds left in the game. It was an absolute bonkers of a game. But having Johnny Mullins in that spot, you almost felt like it was automatic. Like, after a goal, it almost felt as simple as hand him the ball. Hand him the ball. I mean, he's going to be a Harvard nightmare for a long, long time. The first game, he was like 90%. I think he finished yesterday at like 86%. It was unbelievable, but not just his ability to win the draw. Do you see this guy like scoop up ground balls? He's a monster. That dude is absolutely jacked. And he is driven, and he's figured out this craft to be, I think, a top 3 face-off guy in the country.
John Mullen is the reason that and I don't know how you feel about this, Kark, but anybody that wants to get rid of the face-off, I just look at you like you got lobsters crawling out of your ears.
Yeah.
That game does not happen. Comebacks like that don't happen if you don't have the face-off. You have to keep certain things unique to a sport. And I like that lacrosse has the face-off. I don't like the idea of just resetting, behind the goal, and people keep saying, we'll make it like basketball. I'm like, no, make it like lacrosse. Make it stand out.
And the rules committee's done a much better job. Like, the game from a face-off perspective years ago was getting a little crazy. How guys were clamping the ball and keeping it in the back of their stick.
They had to fix it, no doubt about it.
And if you watch what's happened now, you have to be a big-time athlete to excel at that position. Where, honestly, 5-10 years ago, guys were like technicians, and they were just, winning off these clamps. And there were some great athletes then, too. I'm not saying that. But the face-off position has definitely evolved, where it's become a way more athletic type spot. And most of these guys are offensive threats with the ball too. I mean, Johnny Mullins, a great lacrosse player. If you watch him shoot, you watch him throw the ball around. So the sport's done a much better job. In men's lacrosse, I'm a huge women's lacrosse fan too. I feel like men's lacrosse speeds it up quicker. The draw in women's lacrosse takes way too much time in between goals. Like, they have to speed that up. Like, do we want to outlaw the draw in women's lacrosse? No, but it's got to be sped up, because sometimes it's taking, between goals, 45 seconds to a minute to get things rolling. Like, that's why some of these games are ending up being close to 3 hours, which, every lacrosse game, men's and women's, should be under a 2-hour window or in that 2-hour frame. But, the rules committee's, I think, done great work in men's and women's lacrosse. And I watch a ton of women's lacrosse. There's parts of women's lacrosse that I like better than men's in terms of like how unspecialized it is in certain positions. And they don't really sub a ton. Like that is like lacrosse at its purest form if you watch midfielders play.
Yeah, you're right in it with your daughter playing lacrosse right now. So, that's a sports parent speaking in addition to a lacrosse fan right there. Kark, before we preview Syracuse-Princeton, a game you're going to be on the call for, and we're excited for that this weekend at Hofstra. There's two recent videos that you did revolving Syracuse lacrosse that I wanted to get your thoughts on. You're doing an excellent series, which you actually did with Coulter Mackesy as well from Princeton, so we'll touch on that in a moment. But what was your big takeaway in spending some time with Joey Spallina and learning about the hidden ball trick, learning about how he sees the game? And this is somebody that's been around the sport from basically the time he could walk, right? And now it's all coming to fruition here at Syracuse.
I think my biggest takeaway, Brent, is lacrosse is his life, right? Like he thinks about it 24 hours a day. He has it in every part of his body, right? Like that's a big piece of his identity. Is his family's involved in so many respects. I mean, there's his two brothers, then there's the two sisters. All of them play the sport of lacrosse. The dad coaches the game at the collegiate level. He's a GM in the PLL for the California Redwoods. The mom is at every single game. So like lacrosse is like their common thread between them as a family. And it's his love for the game and passion because he breathes the game, but it's also how smart he is. When you think about something all the time, you're going to end up being good at it, right? You're going to think about it at a different level because you're always kind of tweaking and thinking about ways to do things better. And I think that's what Joey Spallina's greatest strength is. He's one of the smarter lacrosse players playing the college game right now. He's always making great decisions. He rarely turns the ball over in bad spots. I mean, when the ball goes through X for Syracuse, like good things happen with Joey Spallina. Look at the winning assist that he had to Owen Hills. Like he's such a smart player. He knows like, okay, that defender is not going to get on me and play the body game, so I'm not going to have to dodge. I'm just going to sit back here. You don't want to get all over my hands and my gloves. I'm going to make this feed. Whereas like if that guy pressed, he would have a different decision in that exact spot. So I just think it's always about his lacrosse IQ, how he sees the game, how he loves it, and his creativity too. Like creativity is not just how you throw behind the back passes or you have a signature move. Creativity is finding ways to do things differently. And I felt like there was a big piece of my time with him was based on that. Even spending time with offensive coordinator Pat March with regards to Joey Spallina, and when we're dissecting film, like the way he sees the game, the way Pat March can use him in so many different spots, whether he plays on ball, whether he plays off ball, as a shooter, as a passer. Like I think his game is very underrated from a versatility perspective. You know, we've had a lot of great players over the years at Syracuse, and like there's always something that you think of when that player's name is mentioned, right? It's like his dodging ability, the way he shoots the ball 100 miles an hour, if it's his finishing ability of all these past Syracuse greats. It's really hard to put a finger on Joey Spallina because his game has really evolved to a point where it's so versatile, where his greatest strength is not just having one strength.
His moves come with purpose. You did a great job kind of highlighting. So Spallina kind of has his own unique move, and he mentioned it was modeled off John Grant Jr. and Lyle Thompson, and every lacrosse fan. You have people that influenced you who played the sport and on through. But there's a purpose behind why he does this particular move. When he was explaining how to do the hidden ball tricks, you could tell this is somebody that you said he thinks about the game 24/7, and not just because he enjoys it. There's a tacticalness to it. It's like the next time I'm in this situation, I need to do this, and just the way he sees the game. So you mentioned it. That goal to Hiltz, like they've run that play 100 times before that. And in that moment, he knew where to go with the ball. So people that have not seen that, check that out. Kark did an amazing job with that video with Joey, and highly recommend it. And another one I highly recommend is you did a feature recently with Gary Gait. And of course, part of that story was about Paul had an unfortunate accident in recent years, and the story of how Paul is persevering through that. He was at the game on Sunday, and it was great to see him there, and the connection that they have as twin brothers. And everybody kind of knows the bedtime stories about the Gait brothers in the sport, but how they've evolved in their business and now their relationship with Paul recovering from that injury. So I would highly encourage people to check out that aspect of it. But I wanted to ask you about, Kark, was Gary is a coach that sometimes you can't tell if they won or lost, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty even keeled. When you watch him on the sideline, he trusts Pat March to run the offensive huddle. He trusts John O'Durney to run the defensive huddle. when we have him in media sessions, I'm sure you've gotten the sense when you talk to him before games, Gary, calm is contagious, right? Just goes out of his way to keep things level. How much of that do you think was Roy Simmons like that as a coach? Do you think that's the Simmy influence on him, or why do you think Gary kind of coaches that way, where he tries to keep everything, the waters calm?
I've talked to Gary quite a bit over the years, specifically the last few years, about like his childhood, his upbringing. I think he's one of those players that doesn't say much as an athlete. And I've talked to a lot of people who've competed against him over the years too. When he was playing, he's the greatest player of all time. I've watched the sport of lacrosse from the mid 80s to now. So it's like, 40 years of watching this game. I've never seen anyone like him. I tell people all the time, like, if you turn on a Syracuse lacrosse game in 1986, the year before he arrived with Paul from British Columbia, and then you turn on a game in 1990 when they were about to leave and win 3 straight national championships, the game looks completely different, right?
Yes,
He changed the game like no one else. And the moves that he made, 35 years ago would still be considered like innovative elite moves today, right? Like, he pushed the sport well before its time. Now, I say that because he had a massive target on his back every time he played. Everyone tried to stop Gary Gait when he was a player, and he would get cheap shotted. And he never even told me he got cheap shotted. I just watched it, right? And you see the defenders like breaking sticks over his back and just always trying to stop him. He never said a word. He never was a trash talker. He never was the type of player that would try to retaliate. Like, it was almost unbelievable to watch him and Paul play as athletes. And Lyle Thompson reminded me of the Gates too, because he was the same type of player where his creativity and his innovation was off the charts, and players always tried to hit him and get him late, and he never would say a word. Almost like a Wayne Gretzky too. So I think he had that in his DNA, but then I think Coach Simmons really influenced him in terms of his next step. Because as an athlete, you're one thing. As a coach, you can take your personalities and your traits and you could go one way or another, right? Like, your baseline's your baseline, but you could veer off to one side as being someone who's so dialed in and maybe a little militant, as opposed to someone who's loose and maybe free-spirited and has an artistic mind as a coach. He obviously went that route. And I think Coach Simmons was the biggest influence on him in that regard. Like, even for me, when I was coaching, when I was 23 years old, I was coaching a varsity lacrosse team. There were pieces. Now, I'm not as calm as Roy Simmons Jr., but there were pieces of coach that I would try to infuse in my players or remind myself of how things need to be done, even though I want to revert back to maybe something that I don't want to do because it's more in my DNA. So I think Gary had the baseline as a player and just his overall personality. But I think Coach Simmons, when he walked away from playing, or when he was playing and coaching, because he did that for so long, I think Coach Simmons' influence on him was huge. It's his greatest strength, but there are times, just like anyone, when you think of who you are as a person, your greatest strength oftentimes could be your greatest weakness. So when they're losing 8-2 to Harvard and every Syracuse alum is watching the game and they're saying, what's going on? Like, wake these guys up. How aren't we prepared for this? Like, this is awful. I can't believe we're going to lose in the first round. I mean, people are throwing stuff at televisions and screaming and cursing. But when you're down by 5 goals in the fourth quarter, a tight team isn't making that type of comeback. So you gotta be able to just live with it a little bit and trust it, right? Like, everyone's process is different. His process is one that I think he empowers his players, but don't mistake that for like lack of competitive fire. This guy is competitive. Like, he wants to win, but he's not going to do it at the expense of lighting a kid up or screaming at them or losing his cool. That's not in his nature. So I think people don't understand how competitive he is too. Like, in that piece that you were referring to, like, he said at the end, it was very powerful. He said it in like a profound tone. Like, I want my players to know every single time they step on the field, they can win. And like, he said it with conviction, and he means that, right? It's just that he's not going to do it in a way that like he's militant or he's a dictator. Like, he's going to take some lumps, and there's going to be some moments where you question things, but at the end, he's the greatest lacrosse player of all time. His lacrosse mind is off the charts. And I think people have a certain type of they want to categorize him when they watch games on TV one way, but that's not the reality.
I think that's well said. And another thing that Gary has said consistently this year, Kark, some would see it as coach speak, but I believe him when he says this. They have not played their best game yet. We've seen moments, we've seen streaks of it. Certainly, they had to dig in and do it against Harvard, and I've seen it certainly in the ACC tournament. The first Notre Dame win, I can give you a few other examples. I think they're going to have to play that game to beat this Princeton team. So let's bookend this. We started with a little history of Syracuse-Princeton. Now let's look at this matchup here. Another Kark plug here because he did a great video with Coulter Mackesy. When you take Jesse Hubbard's record at Princeton, that's pretty damn good. Your video with him, and I think Syracuse is going to have to be very cognizant of this. He can score from anywhere. There is no such thing as an off-angle shot with Coulter Mackesy. So I think right there, what's the nightmare John O'Derna has this week deciding how, and I think particularly where you've got to guard him.
You know, I think you said it best. He could shoot from anywhere in the offensive set. The issue is he's not the only great shooter on that team. I actually look at Syracuse and Princeton as very similar in terms of the skill sets, right? They have dynamic players who can shoot the lights out of the ball because Coulter Mackesy is the lefty. Don't forget about Nate Kabiri on the right-hand side.
Mm-hmm.
He throws some ridiculous shots to the corners, too. He had 5 goals and 2 assists against Towson. So those guys are like bookends, right? Kabiri is only a sophomore. Coulter is the senior who's been around and now the all-time leading goal scorer in Princeton lacrosse history. So they bookend you at 2 like stretch shooters. So you have to press the perimeters, and that actually opens up a lot of the inside with some really, really skilled guys like Chad Palumbo and Colin Burns. Like everyone is super, super skilled, and Princeton's at their best in the same sense when Syracuse is at their best, when the ball is moving at hyperspeed. And you'll see a lot of plays from Princeton. You're like, wow, that looks familiar. Syracuse plays that way, where it's just like one more pass, hot potato, like the ball is just spinning. And you're like, wow, that's the Syracuse play. Like when you're referring to Hiltz is behind the back to Michael Leo, like you're going to see that kind of stuff with Princeton. If I'm John O'Derna, I'm more worried about the ball movement and the outside shooting than the dodging. Like Coulter is a lethal shooter. He's not the type of guy who pulls defenders out and announces to a stadium that he's going to break everyone down and then score. Like he's going to come off a pick. He's going to catch a ball off a poor approach and then dodge and make you pay for your mistake if you're kind of out of position. The one main dodger that John O'Derna has to deal with is Tucker Wade. He's different than the rest of the team. He's kind of an old school north-south dodger, and he's being blanketed by all these skilled guys. So you have to own that matchup. If you own the Tucker Wade matchup and then you play really smart off-ball defense, you can have success against Princeton. Now that's easier said than done. But if you start chasing sticks and you're not communicating, they will slice and dice you just like a Syracuse offense would. So this is an interesting matchup because I think these teams are so much alike. To the same respect of like a Coulter Mackesy is an all-time great at Princeton. He doesn't need to own his matchups to have 4 or 5 goals. Joey Spallina is going to be on the verge of breaking some records by the time he leaves Syracuse. He doesn't need to announce to a stadium that he's going to go after his defender and beat him one-on-one. He could beat you in so many different ways. Tucker Wade's the alpha dodger on that team. I look at, the midfield alpha dodgers for Syracuse. Sometimes it's Sam English, sometimes it's Michael Leo. Luke Rowe is like one of those outside hired gun shooters. They're very similar. So I think Princeton's probably looking at this matchup and saying, we can't let Sam English or Michael Leo get separation. And then we need to play really great off-ball defense amongst our close defenders in our attack. So I think these scouting reports, the personnel, very much alike. 2 goalies who get super hot. I think Johnny Mullen has a big advantage at the faceoff X. That's the case most times, unless they're playing maybe North Carolina and 1 or 2 other teams in the country. But this kid McMeekin has really been better earlier in the season. He struggled. He was at like 35% his first 7 games. His last 10 games, he's over 50%. He's a great athlete where the stats don't always show. Like he won't win a faceoff, but he'll chase a player down, get a ground ball. I look at this game, it's like so equally matched. These teams kind of reflect one another in many, many ways. But this game will come down to Syracuse's ability to play off-ball defense. If you and I are talking in a week from now and Syracuse communicated really well and they weren't haphazard or all over the place defensively, which they've had some really good defensive efforts this year. I think they've been covering Notre Dame really good. And that's a good sign for me too, because they covered Jake Taylor really well in the 2 wins. He's an inside off-ball guy. I think you have to be confident that John O'Derna's group can play off-ball. If they do, I think Syracuse wins the game. If they don't play well off-ball, I don't think you could hold this team to under 15 goals and you'll lose.
Carc, you're the best. Appreciate you coming on here and talking some ball with us here. Good luck with everything. Good luck to your daughter as she pursues a career in the sport as well. And we'll be excited to see you on the call, not only Syracuse and Princeton, but Cornell and, hey, the Richmond Spiders. Yeah. Look out. Dan Shamati.
Look, Brent,
West Kenny, baby.
The Spiders believe, man, they were beating Cornell in March 6-1 in that game. Entering the fourth quarter, they were winning 10-8. No team this year controlled Cornell for that long of a duration, because even their one loss, Penn State, they were winning by 3 goals late in the fourth quarter, and then their faceoff guy, Jack Kaskadin, got a 2-minute unreleasable penalty, and Penn State scored a few on extra man. Richmond is the only team that controlled Cornell for 3.5 quarters.
So Syracuse fans, make sure you tune in at 12, not at 2:30, and check out that one. Should be a heck of a matchup before the Orange take on the Tigers. Carc, we will catch up again with you soon, but thanks as always, my friend.
Anytime, Brent. Thank you.
Thanks again to Paul Carcaterra for joining us here on the pod. Love talking lacrosse with Carc. Some great stories there, some terrific insight on the game now, and what should be a hell of a game between Syracuse and Princeton coming up at Hofstra this weekend. Uncle Brent will be there, by the way. If you guys are making the trip to Hofstra, reach out. Let's say hello. Let's hook up before 2 terrific games. As Carc was saying there, don't Cornell Richmond, man. Could the Spiders, remember the Richmond Spiders pulled off pretty big upset back in 1991, 15 beating it 2. Yeah, I know some Syracuse basketball fans would rather not talk about that, but could the Richmond Spiders pull off that level upset, beating mighty Cornell, the heavy favorite, to win the national championship this year? That'd be a heck of a win for West Jenny grad Dan Shamati and his squad. We shall see. But I'll be there in Long Island this weekend, so reach out, especially if you're a Syracuse Sports Insider, because our Syracuse Sports Insiders know they can reach out anytime. They can talk sports with me. They can ask questions, comments, offer their insight, analysis, opinions. So often, your questions, your comments, your suggestions turn into podcasts on this show. The Axe Brent Anything pods, and just featuring your comments. I love this one from Jack, by the way, who said, when it comes to Syracuse lacrosse, play fast, have fun, commit 20 turnovers. It may be old school Syracuse lacrosse, but it's going to require a lot of Pepto-Bismol. Yeah, no question that watching Syracuse can be, what does John Rothstein say? Keep those nitroglycerin pills close by. It can be a little stressful, not going to lie. I get it. But it's also some of the best entertainment value your dollar can get these days. So cannot wait to see these matchups this weekend. I will be there on Long Island. If you're going to be there, come say hi before the games get underway at Hofstra. Thanks to our Syracuse Sports Insiders, as always, for their great insight. We'd love for you to sign up today for direct text message access to me. It's just $3.99 a month to be a Syracuse Sports Insider, but you can try it free for 2 weeks. I would really appreciate it if you guys could not only subscribe to the pod, but maybe leave us a review. That really helps us stand out in the podcast world, especially on YouTube. I'm trying to get into the YouTube comments a little more and react to people and just see what you guys are saying there. So if you could leave us a review, that would be fantastic. We would greatly appreciate that. All right, let's let our friends from the Dart Brothers take us out here in the terrific song, Marjorie. Thanks for hanging here on Syracuse Sports, guys. We will talk to you next time.
Dusty apartment is full of things that are hard to see. Life time.